Welcome to Fandom Power.
What's up, guys? It's Wes, Andy, and Hank, and we're back with my lord fan batch episode. It's our episode 8. It's episode 9 of the Bad Batch. We are now over the 50% mark, gentlemen. How do we feel about that?
I informed you thusly. We informed you all thusly. We informed you all thusly.
Oh my god. Okay, I'm just going to put it out there now. Last week I said, do all roads in modern Star Wars television lead to Boba Fett? And the answer is yes, they do.
If it ain't broke, don't fix it.
Or, if there ain't enough backstory, make one. If this does not link up directly to Book of Boba Fett, then I will be surprised at this point.
Amazing.
Okay. 52%, whatever the percentage is. We are over the halfway mark. We've got 7 more episodes to go. I know I mentioned it a while ago that I have converted. I'm so down the well now that I'm going to be upset when it's over. I don't want it to end.
Yeah, it's super strong, and just like the other ones, it amplifies as we get towards the end.
Really
They're just super crafty at pulling the strings, and man,
they keep giving us more of what we didn't know we needed.
Isn't that the truth, though? You think you've got it all figured out, and we make jokes about our headcanons and what we think is happening and what we would like to happen, and then the Filoni-verse throws a curveball at us, and we go, "Oh my god!" And I don't know about you guys. For me, every has been excellent. I've been very, very happy with what they've thrown at us.
Yeah, there hasn't been anything that made me go, "Oh no." And
No.
all of the properties so far. I mean, there's very few things that I had problem with or could find fault with the Mandalorian, if anything. And this is very much the same.
Same. Yeah, me too. Well, this one, it's called, it's episode 9. This one is titled Bounty Lost. It debuted Friday, June 25th, 2021. The runtime on this episode, it's 23 minutes, 56 seconds without your credits, or a solid 28 with. This one's written by Matt McNevets. This week, we get a new name in our production team. Not new, but new to the director's chair. This is co-directed by Nathaniel Villanova, which we're more than familiar with. But this one, co-directed by Brad Rao. We've seen Brad Rao's name come up in the credits before around the art department and the animation department. But this one, if you're not familiar with this guy, Hank, you're going to like this one. 5 episodes of Rebels.
Nice.
The character Fen Rao
perfect.
is named after him.
Oh, amazing. Right on.
7 episodes of Star Wars Resistance, and the part that I think you'll really like, Hank, is Brad Rao directed every episode of Forces of Destiny.
Oh, amazing. That's great. You guys check that out in the ether there. They're great. I know they're aimed at children, but they're really, really strong stuff.
They
actually.
are. Yeah, they're really
strong stuff. Yeah. And we won't hold the Resistance stuff against them.
I can say if for no other reason that I've seen it, I have watched it. Don't ask me what happened, but my eyes saw 99% of it.
Hey, it's up there with Droids.
So you had said last week that you'd gone back and watched it, and I missed the fact that Droids quietly got added to the playlist there.
Totally got quietly added.
Ewok was put up right away with the Caravan of Courage and the battle for Endor, but I was not aware that Droids had went up until I was clicking through earlier this week. And I'm like, what? Droids? Oh, I gotta rewatch that.
Yeah, totally rewatched that this week.
Cool. Did you watch like all of it?
Most of it. I have 2 episodes. I have the finale, and then there's a strange episode that I even wasn't aware of, which is episode 1 of season 2.
Oh,
it's like a 13th episode. I didn't even know existed. So there's a season 2 with one single episode.
That's interesting.
That I never saw in real time.
I wonder if that's like a bonus thing. Like they never got to broadcast it. So now that it's streamed, they can put that out there.
Some of it's pretty great. I mean, they take wacky liberties, and I guess they're being allowed to. Is when Lucas was just sort of, experimenting with things like their first master just happens to have a lightsaber that he found, so he runs around with a green lightsaber, which made the first canonical appearance, or not canon, but because certainly it rewrites canon completely. Because the Empire is the main protagonist, and even Vader and Boba Fett appear in the show.
Well, this is it, right?
This is still prior to Captain Antilles owning, and there's no references to Anakin having owned or made either droid, or so. Yeah,
does it work on that level?
Oh, I mean, it feels familiar. Yeah, it still does. Like you can just, it's kind of like the comic book lore. Yeah. But it feels familiar because the R2 sounds are accurate. The blaster effects, the world is very accurate, and certainly Anthony Daniels makes it feel like you're watching C-3PO all the time. So
yeah, he does.
No, it doesn't. It's not as distracting as the Ewoks. Actually, it's it's really cool animation style.
Right. I know Ewoks, even as a kid, was a harder watch for me because, and I don't mean it in a bad way, but as a young child in 1985, so I'm 11. I wanted to watch boys cartoons, and I felt that Ewoks was really kind of pointing at the girls. I really did. The whole relationship between with Nisa and Wicket, it was a harder watch and a little more hokey. It was like watching
the magical trees and the fairies, and absolutely.
Watching, Care Bears without symbols on their tummies,
No, absolutely. And it was part of an hour-long block, so I can't remember which show aired first, but I know that I was more distracted when Ewoks was on, certainly.
With Boba Fett
having rewatched Ewoks, it's crazy darker than I remember. Like
I am going to give it a rewatch, both shows actually. But I wanted to ask, given where we're going with the Bad Batch and Book of Boba Fett, what's it like when Boba Fett shows up in droids? Is he as mysterious and dangerous and deadly as we want him to be?
It's very similar to but not in any like I'm gonna he doesn't murder people in a child's show, kind of like is happening in this one, but and it's a little similar to the idea that they had in the holiday special, where he pretends to be an ally and turns out to be agent of Vader, and
interesting.
But there's no Slave One, there's no riding the dragon or the tuning fork thing, and the armor is very. They could even have it's almost like a third version of the armor, animated version of the armor.
Right.
But it's because the property was high profile, and they were just trying to, right?
Well, they were trying to keep it alive in '85, and I mean, they needed something to keep the toy machine moving. As horrible as that sounds,
it's true. And there was a droids line of. I know there was definitely an Ewoks line, but was there also a droids line?
Yes, there was a droids line.
There was
in North America. So they didn't actually get a full. The full line was not released in North America. You got the two droids. You got 3PO and R2.
Right.
Most of the cast of side characters like Blix and the kids, the one master with the
size from or whatever.
Yeah, so they actually got a larger release, I think, in Brazil.
Oh wow.
So they're out there. I mean, you can go online and look at them, and they're super expensive to buy on.
You had a 3PO come through the shop.
I did. I had a droid. I had a droid's 3PO come through the shop a couple of years ago, and the cool thing for the action figure, the cool thing for the action figure people out there, if you've never seen the droid's C3PO, I'm telling you right now, it is a straight up reuse of the Empire breakaway C3PO, but just repainted in the droid's colors.
Yeah.
Right down to cool. You can pop all the limbs off. So. And of course, that's one of the issues with those types of toys, that once you pop them apart and put them back together a few times, they kind of get a little floppily wobbly. But this one came in great shape.
My original C-3PO ended up in a snowbank, which I found the next year, but it was completely bleached. Like it was identical to almost the Death Star droid. At that, it was completely silver.
Yeah. All right, so let's get back on track here. Our episode synopsis this week is the batch embark on a rescue mission. Okay, I'm just going to put it out there. Last week, I was pretty happy. Hey, we got our answer. Who hired Fennec Shand? Turns out that was only partly correct. We get a little bit more on that this week. And the other thing is, and I know that I was really skeptical and I really kind of mulled it over a lot. And I know we talked a lot offline about how I was really stuck on there was something else more to the plan, the Kaminoan's plan.
That's right.
Turns out I was wrong. Turns out it really is the obvious answer, and that she is the genetic template for the next batch of or the next generation of clones.
Fantastic.
Always then the obvious one is in your face. Couldn't see the forest through the trees. I couldn't. All right. This episode opens. We're up in the upper atmosphere of Bracca. Crosshair in his attack shuttle is pursuing the Havoc Marauder relentlessly, keeping up a steady barrage of blaster fire. There we go. Put that up there. Cool that he's still presence of mind now to keep the pursuit up, and I think it kind of suggests, we were concerned that both characters, how they were sort of the mirror image of each other, Crosshair and Hunter, that their injuries were like, oh, this is going to stick around for a while. Maybe not. We talked about, there's some other people who were kind of digging in on the review stuff that we're doing, had talked about that maybe this was going to be the end of Crosshair's usefulness. And I mean, like, oh, he's still got one eye. And that was the joke that we made. It's also his shooting eye. So, I mean,
right.
He's still good.
I think he's going to recover completely the same way I think Hunter's going to recover.
Yeah, I think in that scene, he was probably propped up in the back of a ship, not able to do much while that other pilot flew the...
Absolutely. He's sitting sort of not tail gunner, but sitting in the seat behind him, and he's yelling at him, like...
I got to wonder, too, if a nice twist won't be that perhaps that's the side that he was injured on is the side with the chip, and maybe the chip is damaged, and maybe we'll get a little redemption arc going on here.
Yeah. Redemption is a huge part of Star Wars, and I think that on some level they'll,
clearly the other guys still love him. They all, Tech is very cold and calculated, but they have fondness. At least, if it's not just brothers in arms, it's deeper, right? And they do all exhibit fondness, like, I miss him,
Talk about. I actually had a thought about Tech this week, particularly around this scene where it's like you say he's cold. Because he is so analytical and technical. And I find it ironic that he's the pilot, so you have to imagine in this scenario that every maneuver that he is pulling is probably textbook. There's no, I don't want to say creative, maneuvering. Maybe there is. Maybe there is. And we're just kind of
no rolling to the left,
not aware of that. But I have to imagine you take the guy who's the most technically inclined, you make him the pilot, and suddenly that's sort of what you get. On board the ship, Hunter asks if there's any sign of the bounty hunter, and Tech tells him that the only ship on their scanners is Crosshair, and he's right on top of them. And as we were just talking about earlier, there's that Crosshair looking an awful lot like Dengar. And like I said before, he's still got his shooting eye, so I don't think there's any danger that... I don't think he's out of the picture yet. I think, he's still the big bad going forward. Right on. As the Havoc Marauder takes more damage, Wrecker returns fire from the tailgun, exclaiming, "It's getting hot!" Tech tells us that he's preparing to jump to light speed, but Hunter protests, not without Omega.
No soldier left behind.
No, I know. Echo pipes in saying that the bounty hunter that kidnapped her is long gone, and they won't be able to find her if Crosshair shoots them down. So, with the rear deflector shields failing, Hunter reluctantly gives the order to make the jump. As I'd said earlier, the idea that his usefulness, Crosshair's usefulness, may be up. I don't think that's the case. And there's still some duality between Crosshair and Hunter. Now they're both their armor is off. They're both wrapped up in bandages for the whole episode.
Well, like you said last episode, if his chip fails.
Yeah,
and he still maintains this, anti-Hunter personality, making him an even truer villain the whole time. That could be interesting too.
I think so. So from there, as the Havoc Marauder bounds off into hyperspace, we get a wipe transition to another ship traveling through hyperspace. And I thought this was a really cool design. And I'm like, wait, it's kind of familiar, but kind of not.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of similar to Ahsoka standing on the bridge.
In a way, yeah. I'm looking at this thing, and I mean, we're going to get to it a little bit later because I've got it, but some photos. Does it not, kind of look reminiscent, the angularness of that reminiscent of the Ghost?
That's the first thing I thought. It's just like a modified version.
Yeah,
of the
yeah,
Ghost.
very much so.
And what appears to be a crazy tower of turrets on the top, like ports
Big
for
time.
missiles,
Yeah.
crazy.
So this is Cad Bane's new ship. It is a new ship for him, because the last time we saw Cad Bane in a ship, he actually had a Rogue class Porax 38 that he'd named the Xanadu Blood. If you don't remember what Cad Bane's fighter looked like, there it is there. There's your Rogue class Porax 38. This is kind of what it looked like back in the Clone Wars. And if you think that you've seen that before,
It's kind of like a flattened TIE fighter.
Yeah, kind of.
Or like one of the droid fighters too. It's kind of an amalgam of things.
It does have a sort of a what do you call them? Vulture droid-esque look. If you took
especially the cockpit.
Droid. Yeah. So if you think you've seen it before, you have. And we actually got to see this ship in live action back in The Mandalorian, as it was the referred to as the gunship when the Republic X-Wing patrol showed up, and they ended up shooting it as it was coming out of the hangar. It's the same class of ship. So I thought that was really cool that it's now made a leap into live action. I knew I had seen it before when we saw it in Mandalorian, but I couldn't quite put my finger on it. I kept wanting to link it back to the role-playing game, but I actually think it's a new design for television. On board his new ship, Omega wakes up in a prison cell. The doorway is ray shielded, and Todo 360 comes in to check on her.
Whenever we see those red ray shields too, I always think of Obi-Wan screaming without being able to pass through it.
No!
That's just every time I see a red sort of light, it's Darth Maul around.
Yeah, really. Omega demands that the droid release her, but he refuses. Getting up to her feet, she realizes that her comm link has been removed, and Todo informs her that it has been stowed in a secured compartment. A nice little shot here of Omega and Todo bantering.
Seth Green returning for the voice of Todo.
Big time, yeah.
Does an awesome job. He's got way more lines in this episode, too. He's probably the standout character in this episode, actually.
I agree. Going back to the Clone Wars and the relationship, and they talk a little bit about the relationship between Todo and Cad Bane in this episode, particularly where Omega is very keen on how, his mistreatment, but Todo, I don't know if it's because he's a droid and he's just easy enough to wipe his mind, but my treatment is very adequate. Yeah. But it's like you hear it in his voice, like, are you saying
like a battered wife, right, or a battered spouse? Yeah.
You saying that to convince her? Or are you saying that to convince yourself?
Yeah.
Side note: did you see Seth Green's performance in the movie Without a Paddle?
I have not seen Without a Paddle.
Okay,
years ago.
It's been a while for that one, but in that movie, they go to reclaim some of their history, and the one thing he pulls up is his C-3PO figure.
Oh, cute.
Beautiful.
Yeah. But I mean, I think of we talked about this yesterday, sort of offline, about the you'd put up on the fan group, Hank, the picture of from Blue Harvest with the Red Squadron checking in, Red Buttons standing by, and I
Simply
said, this is still one of my favorite scenes. And
totally.
We talked about, the robot chicken connection and just how many Star Wars episodes or Star Wars themed segments in Robot Chicken were there.
Oh, man.
No surprise that Seth Green is a huge Star Wars fan and gets a little his own little piece of the canon. So good for him.
Favorite one there is what the hell's an aluminum falcon?
Oh, yeah. Or the one where the Emperor is on the escalator. And he's passing the stormtroopers one at a time, and he's very patient. Stormtrooper.
Yeah.
And he gets losing his patience. And fuck you.
Yeah.
So good. Fantastic.
All right. So, still clutching his severed thruster, Toto advises Omega to cooperate with Bane as the bounty hunter enters the corridor. We get Cad Bane coming in to talk to her. The bounty hunter kneels down to face Omega at her level and asks, "How's my asset doing?" She promptly corrects him, stating defiantly, "My name's Omega," and asks who he is. Removing his hat and holding it across his chest like a southern gentleman, he replies, "Cad Bane at your service."
Now, funny, when he removes his hat, did you notice there's a plate going across the side there?
I kind of wanted to talk about that because we talked about that previs last week, and there's some credibility there that event may have actually taken place.
Mm-hmm.
If not with Boba Fett, with maybe another bounty hunter. But as you say, Andy, he is clearly wearing some form of, I don't want to call it a prosthesis, but
there's a plate,
as you say, like a plate.
So there's there's a lot of that storyline prevised out, and I haven't watched it all, but I mean, some of it is hard to watch because it's very, very rough. But the audio, like the story beats, are all there.
Yeah,
and I'd like to rewatch or even go deeper into it to see if we do get Boba's escape from prison, because as we all just sort of had that epiphany this week, wow, there's a huge gap between the last time we see Boba in prison in season 5 of Clone Wars and the events of The Empire Strikes Back, which really wasn't apparent because, I mean, it's he's surrounded in mystery anyway, but when you put all the ducks in a row, oh my goodness.
Dave Filoni has said on the record that you don't know when we're telling these stories. There's no definitive timeline put on this stuff. And it's like, you bastard.
When Fennec Shan says to Omega in this episode, Omega and I go way back. Wow.
Yep.
I mean, how much time has passed? Like, I know way back can be a couple months for a kid, but a couple months anyway, right? Like maybe a year.
That as just a sarcasm that was really being just her throwing shade at Bane. But you're right, though. Like, there is an element of like, oh, how long ago was that? Right on. So Omega demands to know where she's being taken, but Bane ignores her as he strides back towards the ladder. Omega shouts, "You'll be sorry when my friends come for me." Looking over his shoulder, the bounty hunter replies, "Your friends are long gone. I made sure of that. No one is coming for you, little lady. Now sit tight and don't cause any trouble." As Cad Bane leaves the brig, Toto chases after him, thruster in hand, bemoaning the inconvenience of having to hobble on one leg, wondering when he'll get repaired. Mr. Bane, Mr. Bane.
That's so good.
I don't remember him calling him in the Clone Wars Mr. Bane, but every time he said it, I think of like Bane, giant luchador Batman villain.
No, it's true.
Mr. Bane.
It's true.
Back on the bridge, Bane contacts Lama Su, informing him that the girl is alive and he expects to be paid a premium for it. Cool little like the guy just exudes cowboy, right?
Yeah, he's Lee Van Cleef. He's Lee Van Cleef from the.
Totally is.
Yeah,
pretty simple.
There is a little on the control panel.
Yeah, it says cargo hold and cell blocks.
There you go.
Nicely done.
Again, I got a thing for hyperspace. There was so much hyperspace in this episode. I'm like, I am not going to screenshot it all because that would just be a waste of our time. But man, I love it. And I'm a huge. I love ships. So this episode, like, I was poring over this ship trying to figure out what's going on here, and I'm super, super in love with it. Hopefully, it'll get a release in the Star Wars X-Wing miniatures game because I want one. Lama Su says, "See, then she stays that way." And Bane tells the Kaminoan Prime Minister, "That depends on you. Bring me my unmarked credits. I'll meet you at the rendezvous." From there, we get another wipe transition that's to the interior of Prime Minister Lama Su's office, where he is sitting there along with Nala Se and Ton Wee. And we see the conclusion of the holotransmission sort of from their perspective. Have we seen Ton Wee in this show yet? Is this her first?
I do not believe. She may possibly have been in the background,
but maybe in the first. But
yeah. No, this is the first I like where she's definitely focused on. And when I saw her, I went, oh, so I think it is the first.
That's kind of what I was like too, because she was so prolific in Attack of the Clones, where she was sort of the liaison for Django.
Right. No, absolutely.
Obi-Wan Django connection. I thought, oh, is she not around anymore? And I guess she is.
Yeah, the way Boba interacts with her in Attack of the Clones, it's almost like, oh, Tanway's here. Like it's very familiar. Yeah, exactly. That's sort of like Tanway would be Boba's version of Omega's Lama Su.
Yeah, I guess so.
Or
Nala Se.
Nala Se, sorry.
Yeah. Speaking of Nala Se, she actually volunteers to deliver the payment and pick up Omega, but the Prime Minister, dropping his poker face, tells her that her personal interest in the clone has threatened their operation long enough. He then turns to Tanwi and orders her to go to the abandoned cloning facility on Bora Vio to make the exchange.
We were spot on there.
How long has the Prime Minister been entertaining her isms, whatever those are? Like, it's safe to say that the introduction of Rampart and the New Order and wanting to phase out the clones has obviously sped up their need to stay in business, but it's so suggestive that he's been tolerating whatever she's been doing, her attachment to Omega for quite some time now. Do we think he's been sort of...
It's not really a problem as long as Omega's in their possession, and that at any time you can take his DNA and experiment with it.
Yeah.
And so that his patience has got to be running out now that the asset is in the ether.
Right.
And and we get we get almost, I guess, if we can say that the Mandalorian, everything that passes has legacy lines now. If we can say that, we get a legacy line, which is basically the sentiment that the magistrate gives Din Djarin, which is, kill it, collect the juice and then terminate it, because we don't, we don't need anything beyond that.
Turning his attention back to Nala Se, the Prime Minister tells her that once Omega has been returned, she's to be confined to the sub-level facility, and once her genetic material has been extracted, she is to be terminated.
So this confirms something we thought.
What's that?
That the landing port on the top is just like the tip of it, and there's a whole bunch of sub facility underneath all that water.
I would think so. Like, there's got to be, when he says sub, presumably subsurface.
Yeah.
Right.
Again, so this whole idea that the Rampart and his, introduction and his sort of in Tarkin's pocket wanting to phase out the clones, this has really kind of put a wrench sort of in the plan, and they really do have to speed it up. All right. Back on board Bane's ship, Toto, still keeping guard over Omega, struggles to reattach his severed thruster. He blames Hunter for shooting it off, but Omega tells him it's because he was protecting her, and that's what friends do. She then wonders aloud why Toto's friend isn't helping him.
Mm-hmm.
Toto, who sounds like he's trying to convince himself more than Omega, says that Mr. Bane is very busy. And when he drops the tool that he's using to reattach the leg, Omega sees this as an opportunity to help herself. She is so smart in this episode, like super, super coy.
Yeah,
and,
absolutely.
And it's, you don't think that man, I mean, we're all parents in this room. You've been manipulated by your children and didn't realize it after the manipulation was already done? It's right in that vein, right?
It's akin to her using a Jedi mind trick on a droid.
Well, kind of. She tells Toto that she could fix the leg, adding that she's done it a bunch of times for AZ3 back on Kamino. But the little droid balks at her offer, saying that as a techno service droid, he is quite capable of completing his own repairs, adding that you're a prisoner and not to be trusted. Back on the Havoc Marauder, Echo, working from a description given by Hunter, searches the Republic records to come up with the identity of Omega's kidnapper. Let's get this cool shot here of looking at this computer console. And we get the mug shot for Cad Bane. Presumably that would have been when they took him into prison. Get a little bit of I didn't get the presumably on the left hand side. That's just
Cad
that's
Bane.
his name.
Yeah.
On the right-hand side, it's extremely dangerous.
Mm-hmm.
You think? Zeroing in on Cad Bane, Echo explains that Cad had several run-ins with the Jedi and was responsible for the first kidnapping attempt of the Supreme Chancellor. The first, but not the last. Wrecker questions why 2 bounty hunters have now come after Omega, and Tech explains that she's more important than they realized. Having further analyzed Omega's genetic profile, Tech reveals that she has pure first-generation DNA. Unlike the rest of the clone army, who were modified for accelerated growth and obedience, Omega is a pure genetic replication of Jango Fett.
So, does that mean she ages normally then? Which puts her at around the 10-year-old mark.
It has to. I mean, and we're going to get to that here with the one thing that he says. Tech also reveals that, to his knowledge, there was just one other clone with the same genetic profile, and that clone was designated as Alpha, but later referred to as Boba. But since he disappeared at the beginning of the war, Omega is the only source of Jango's raw genetic material. So, of
you
course,
heard it
she's
here
named
first. Omega Fett.
Yeah. Omega
Fett. Bam.
With the little nugget that he was designated Alpha, absolutely she's named Omega. You know, the Alpha and the Omega being the first and the last letters of the Greek alphabet. Also having the biblical connotation of, you know, Jesus Christ being the first and the last God. I don't know how deep we want to go on that, but I mean, I think it's safe to say, at least in this context, we can take that to mean that, you know, Boba Fett being the first and Omega being the last of Jango's genetic material before it deteriorated earlier in the series.
Certainly compromised. And I read an article where someone was like, oh, she's the same genetic as the Wave 1 clones, like Rex is equal to her. And I'm like, you completely misunderstood what they clearly laid out to you there.
Yeah.
And I don't know how that property came across that conclusion. She's she's Boba's sister for all intents and purposes.
Absolutely. And I mean, I actually made a note on that. I don't know where it is. We'll get there to it. Oh yeah. I actually said to you, I put a note here. Hank, you nailed it. Omega Fett. Right. So there's some interesting things going on here. We talked about this yesterday offline as I was putting the notes together for today's show. And I just want to bring it up for the viewing and the listening audience. Boba had a real father-son connection with Jango, like, especially as we see in The Mandalorian when he's going over the chain code with Din Djarin. This is my father. Like, there's no mistaking. Like, he believes that that's his dad.
Yeah, there's lots of comic adventures they go on.
Sure.
You know, prior to the events of Attack of the Clones, where that is implicitly expressed. It's, you know, at the same time, it's a hard life for Boba because he's being trained to be a warrior.
Yeah.
There's mutual respect and love, and you really do get the sense that Jango views him as an extension of himself, if not himself directly.
Yeah. It was, you know, I guess on some level, is that Jango's, perverse way of trying to gain, you know, some level of immortality?
It's a 100% an insurance policy.
I guess so, yeah.
Like for the most notorious bounty hunter in the galaxy, it only pays to train yourself to carry that on.
Yeah. I want to touch on the whole
you might find some sort of motivation in Boba there with Omega, with respect to Omega, too, you know, to carry that on.
I feel like, given the relationship between Boba and Jango and how interested he was, like, let's not forget that Boba Fett went out of his way to orchestrate.
That was his one request.
That
Give
was
me an
Jango's
unaltered clone.
Boba went out of his way to orchestrate a revenge plot against Mace Windu for the murder of his father. Like, that has to tell you that he has a vested interest in the familial connection.
No, 100%. I'm going to double down on last week too, and we're going to get Boba next episode.
I'll take that bet. I will definitely take that one. Yeah. But I think, like, you can't help but be invested, and I'm not going to say if, because it is when he finds out that he's got a sister, another unaltered, another one like me. You can't tell me that he's not going to have an interest in that. It's impossible.
I don't think it's a stretch for Nala Se to try to employ him, and and have him discover in mid, like
mid bounty.
I've captured the target, and then it is revealed to him like a veil removed, where he's at odds with his employers too. It could get real good.
Here's the thing. I'm going to jump ahead a little bit here because talking about the hiring of, we talked about this last week, and I'd said that what are the chances that the Batch employ Boba Fett directly? In this case, I don't think it's a case of they're going to have to pay him. I think because given his interest in who she is, that's enough motivation for him right there. And that does lead to that ultimate, there is going to be another showdown between him and Cad Bane, with Cad Bane as as a mid-level protagonist who wants to get paid. He's not going to get paid if he doesn't have the girl. It brings up some more questions about the hiring of Fennec Shand.
That's true.
We said that the Kaminoans hired her, and that's true, but we're going to find out specifically that it wasn't just them generally speaking, or maybe it was.
I think it was Nala Se that hired her.
I think so too.
Directly.
I think so too.
Whereas Cad Bane was probably hired by Lama Su.
So here's the question though. Like in last week's episode where Lama Su said, we're going to have to add more people, and she said, "Is that wise?" She wasn't talking about Fennec Shand. She was not talking about Fennec Shand. So who else has been hired to go after Omega, and how many others are out there?
And that's another sort of legacy moment is like, they all have a fob, all of them, and it's such a high profile target. I can't see them, the legacy bounty hunters, I can't see not popping up. Dengar, Bosk, IG-88 probably all make an appearance at least in one episode in some sort of that you could chase the bounty now.
We have this Boba has his moment where in the Clone Wars, where we've talked about this before, he was sort of hanging out with Aura Singh and Bosk, and they were showing him the ropes, and they were teaching him how to be a bounty hunter, back when he was 10.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a couple things that came up this week where I'm like, huh? Because Tech has said that he disappeared at the beginning of the war. Well, the beginning of the war was at least 3 years ago, right? So you have this moment where back in the Clone Wars with the revenge plot and the helmet bomb, he plants that, he smuggles his way on board a Jedi Star Cruiser as part of a clone youth brigade. And then we don't see him again after that whole revenge plot. But then later on, go ahead.
Oh, is he on the Republic files or is he on Imperial files when he's looking at that information? Because I was just thinking right now in real time.
I guess technically it's Republic.
Perhaps when he disappeared off the Kaminoan radar,
at
the beginning of the Clone Wars, like the events of the Battle of Geonosis, like you picture him as a child just running off with the helmet in his own direction. Maybe that's when he disappeared off the radar, although he's popped up a few times. It's quite possible. Well, see, they do. It's quite possible he was arrested and in prison, and they didn't know who he was.
Well, this is like, I don't know, but there is that moment where, like, as I went back and I brushed up on the bounty hunter episodes from Clone Wars because I knew that it was going to be important to what we're watching now. And I have to apologize for last week. I did errantly mistake Obi-Wan's identity. He was not undercover as Embo. He was actually undercover as Rocco Hardeen. I should have picked that one up right away. I apologize for that.
We got it by the end of the episode.
Yeah. So Obi-Wan Kenobi basically plots his own, draws out an assassination attempt on himself, survives the assassination attempt only to capture the assassin and then genetically modify himself to take the identity of that assassin so that he can get into prison to figure out this kidnapping plot against the Chancellor. And so he actually goes into prison as Rocco Hardeen.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a scene in the mess hall in the prison where he's going to sit down, and this gravelly younger voice like, "Hey, Hardeen, You stole the bounty from me, and I want revenge. And it's Boba Fett. But I'm like, wait a minute. Just a couple episodes earlier, he looked like this. Do you know what I mean? Like, how much time has passed? So here he is in prison, where he's considerably older. He's got a new haircut. His voice, presumably it's Daniel Logan. The voice has dropped down an octave.
He's going through changes.
Yeah. So is this a retcon? Is this a retcon? Like he disappeared at the beginning of the war? I mean, they would have had records of him being in prison, don't you think?
Maybe. If they knew it was him. Remember, he was Cadet Lucky.
He was Cadet Lucky.
I mean, certainly Mace Windu know who he was, but
they refer to him.
It's hard to say that they would just put him in a regular prison.
Obi-Wan
think they would put him in a regular prison.
System. You don't want this kid. Which says something to me about how prisons work in the Star Wars universe, that they don't apparently they don't distinguish between youth offenders and adult offenders. As we're putting children in prison with adults. And it's Cad Bane actually that put him up to it, because he says to the guy that he's sitting at the table with, he's like, I paid the kid off to cause a distraction. And then they slip out through the morgue in the facility. But that's it. We don't see Boba again until The Empire Strikes Back. And of course, in that famous no disintegrations scene between him and Vader. So this whole, like, you've done it to us again there, Dave and crew. Like, where are things taking place? How much time has passed? Because now the lines are blurred. I'm right back to, I don't think I know how old Boba Fett really is at this point. I mean, mathematically, I know how old he should be, but I'm not convinced that they may have just aged him up.
Yeah, and like you said, in our chat, it was like maybe 2 weeks ago we were talking, and I put him like 16 based on my memory of when he was wearing the kind of cooler armor, and and then you were like, well, that math doesn't work, and I said, okay, no, I agree with you that the math doesn't work, and then so we put him at around 13, 14,
sure,
give or take, but certainly he seems just maybe Mandalorians are more rugged. Maybe
I guess
they peak earlier, perhaps
hardier,
a 13-year-old that could take a punch from Rocco Hardeen, right? Like, so.
Well, that's it, right? So, I mean, if that doesn't, this whole Alpha and Omega thing, we know it's Boba Fett and Omega. There's a absolute collision course. It's happening. It's not a matter of if, it is a matter of when. And as you say, we're banking on it next episode, right?
Yeah, that's my
Cannot wait.
I'll put a paycheck on it because nobody can collect.
All right. Echo deduces that given Omega's importance to the Kaminoans cloning operation, they must have been the ones to put the bounty on her. Hunter then orders Tech to check with Sid to see if any of her contacts knows anything while they continue monitoring the comms.
Yeah, and we got it right again there, where we were speculating that the only choice she would have is just to let them go on their own.
Yep. Cutting back to Cad Bane's ship, we see that Omega, still in her cell, is now coaching Toto through the repair procedure for his leg. It's not going very well, and once again, Omega suggests that he just let her help him. Toto reasserts that she's a prisoner, and Omega plays right along, saying, exactly, it's not like I can escape off the ship. Mm-hmm. Toto concedes. She has a valid point, while Omega adds, I'm just a kid. And with that, Toto agrees to let her out. On the condition that they don't tell anyone.
That's right.
So hobbling on his one little hobbling on his one little thruster, he kind of makes his way up there and lets her out. Picking up the tool that Toto had just dropped, Omega gets to work on the leg. The two share a moment where Omega asks how long he's been working with the bounty hunter. Toto answers, many years, adding, we're a team. But Omega questions him. Really? He's not very nice to you. As she's working away on his leg. Toto tells her he thinks that his treatment is adequate most of the time. Having completed reattaching Toto's thruster, the droid looks down to see that his limb is currently bending the wrong direction. Omega asks him, how does it feel? And he says it's misaligned and it will need to be recalibrated. Talk about Omega and how coy she is in this episode and just how smart she really is. I know if you're listening to the audio version of this, you're not going to be able to see this, but the look in her eyes, she is so laser focused on what she's doing right now, because of course the misalignment was all a part of her plan. Because when Toto tells her to be careful, Omega says, relax, I've done this before, as she not only recalibrates the leg but also deactivates him and then sets about searching the brig for her comlink. Super smart.
Perfect.
Dropping out of hyperspace, we can see the planet Boravio through the viewport of Cad Bane's ship. This planet is wrapped in a very dense cloud cover. And there's a great shot here on the console where you can actually see the schematic of his ship, and that's where I'm like, wait a minute, that really does look like it could be, Carillion, a Carillion design, right?
That's right.
It's very angular. So, and here's a good shot here from the exterior, kind of swooping through the clouds. I really like the image of that. I think it's a cool looking ship. But we'd said this before, like, is this, similar to the Ghost from Star Wars Rebels? The Ghost, which, by the way, is a Carillion VCX 100, albeit heavily modified. And, of course, it looks just like that. But it's not, it's not a far stretch to see the lineage between these two.
No, exactly.
Making his descent, Cad Bane calls for Toto to come up to the cockpit and help with the landing sequence as he can't see through all the chop. When the ship finally breaks through the cloud cover, we see several floating platforms, kind of reminiscent of Cloud City.
Perfect. As
the bounty hunter lands the ship, Omega frantically searches for her comlink using the tools that she acquired from Toto to open all the locked cabinets. Bane calls out to Toto again, and when he gets no answer, heads off to investigate. Bane closing in, Omega is lucky enough to find her comlink and make a break for it before he arrives. Entering the hold and seeing the empty cell, along with Toto lying on the floor, Cad Bane reactivates the droid, demanding to know where the kid is. Toto, unaware that he's been deactivated, points to the empty cell, exclaiming, "She's right there!" Oh, as he realizes that the cell is empty. Omega, having escaped the ship, runs across the landing platform, headed towards the abandoned facility. She dials in her comlink and calls for help. A little look of desperation there. She's making her way in. Back on the Havoc Marauder, Echo reports to Hunter that Sid knows all about Cad Bane except how to find him, and that they're on their own. Just then, the comlink crackles, and the batch can hear that it's Omega, but the transmission is long range, so they have to boost the signal. When Hunter asks her where she is, she tells them she doesn't know. To make matters worse, the signal is too weak to make a direct connection trace, but Tech tells her that if she can create a power surge, they may be able to zero in on that. But just as Tech instructs Omega on how to create the surge, Cad Bane appears out of the fog, exclaiming, "By hook or by crook, you're coming with me."
That's an awesome line.
Yeah. As he slaps a pair of wrist binders on her, he tears the comlink from her arm and smashes it under his boot. All the while, the batch has listened helpless to the whole encounter, unable to do anything. You see Omega getting a pair of binders slapped on her. She's not too happy about that either. From the cockpit of Bane's freighter, a proximity alarm goes off, and Toto notifies him that an unidentified ship is approaching, and Bane tells him to check it out. Back inside the abandoned cloning facility, Bane drags Omega down a hallway, and she struggles fruitlessly to pull free of his grip. Like a little kid, kicking and screaming, "I don't want to go." He tells her, "You're lucky they want you alive." And when Omega questions who, he tells her, "You'll find out soon enough." When the sound of a blaster bolt rings out, Omega triumphantly tells Bane, "I told you you'd be sorry when my friend showed up." Making their way carefully down the hallway, they come across the lifeless body of Ton Wee.
I thought we were going to get Boba right there.
You know what? That sound, I'm like, does that sound like Boba's blaster? Kind of does.
Yeah. I was ready for it.
It was reminiscent of, when they hear the blaster shot in Jabba's palace, like, and then the
single blaster shot.
The Gamorrean guard rolls down the stairs.
Yeah.
But yeah, poor Tonway, she's been gone all this time. We finally get her back, and she's gone again. This time, good. All right. Oh, I think I just skipped over a bit of my notes here. Let me roll back up a bit. Omega struggles to help her, but Bane tells her there's no help she can give. And with that, the masked form of Fennec Shand strides into the hallway, blaster drawn in one hand and a credit case in the other. Now that's a pretty cool dynamic now. There she is holding the money, and with the dead cloner, we're at a bit of a standoff. Bane tells her, "You got no business messing with my score." But she shrewdly replies, "You of all people know it's all about the price." Adding, "Besides, she was my score first. Omega and I go way back, don't we?" Cad Bane tells her she lacks the experience to be going up against him, but then is quick to point out she holds the credit case and proposes he trade the girl for the credits. Bane agrees, saying that it sounds fair, but he insists that Fennec goes first. And just then, Toto 360 arrives and snatches the case from Fennec's hand. So how fast the tide turns in this one. Thinking that he now has all the cards in his hand, Bane draws his blasters and begins to open fire. Fennec dives for cover as the two exchange fire. Wanting to end the fight quickly, Bane throws a grenade down the hallway, but Fennec is able to redirect it with a kick, sending it square into Toto 360. It was a pretty cool move too. Visually, it was very striking with that lunge, like she's
soccer,
kind of sliding into home base and boop, kicks the grenade at the same time.
And then he blocks it with the case.
Well, poor guy too, right? I mean, you think, oh, I actually thought, yeah, he's done.
Tough case, man.
Didn't
even dent it.
The little droid tries to take cover behind the credit case that he's currently holding. And when the explosive goes off, he's blown out the window along with the case, which is now raining credits into the planet's atmosphere. Where is it here? Just got to find it. Oh, my Lord. I'm ahead of myself. There we go. As he's staring at the one little credit there, kind of, as they all fall out. With the two bounty hunters locked in a pitched battle, Omega makes a run for it, but not before Cad Bane orders Toto to find the girl. Bane and Shand continue to exchange fire, with the former chasing the latter until she ducks through a doorway into a dark corridor. Thinking that he has her cornered, he cautiously stalks toward her, sticking close to the wall. Rounding a corner, he's shocked to see that an explosive has been stuck to the wall, but it's too late to react, and the hunter is blown back against the far wall. Can't tell me that didn't hurt. I done got blowed up.
He gets knocked out for a brief second here.
Yeah. It's funny how fast people recover in this show, by the way.
Oh, yeah.
Omega, still bound in her wrist binders, wanders into a dark hangar. The area is dimly lit by several large, translucent, fluid-filled containers. Stumbling into one, she's shocked to see the contents inside. It appears to be a failed cloning experiment, and there are several more beside it. This is a pretty harrowing scene as the realization as she looks up and sees what's going on. And as I said, sort of the first one, like you say, Hank, it looked kind of like a Sullustan.
Yeah.
And the descriptive audio described it as a man. So, I mean, that there is definitely something going on there, because there was a lot of disfigurement. And she has that moment of again, it kind of dips into horror movie territory where she has that where she's really kind of caught off guard by what she's seeing.
Yeah, it's kind of like that scene in Alien Resurrection where Sigourney Weaver's walking through the hall of all the failed attempts.
Yeah. Ooh, thanks.
There's a moment here, and I don't know if you have a shot of it, and I thought of it after, but her face is reflected in the tank.
Yeah.
And she's having a reflection, a moment, and realizing like, this is where she comes from. There you go. This is where she comes from. This is a huge moment for Omega.
It's big time, yeah.
While all this other, the sentience and the friends and the adventure is all there, this is her coming to terms with her origin point.
Absolutely.
It's a heavy moment, and it's handled seriously.
On her for the rest of the episode.
And I think lingering into especially what she has to say at the very end, lingering through the rest of the series. That she's seeing herself in that tank, and that's very important.
Placing her hands on one of the glass containers, her gaze drops to the floor as she's hit with the reality of what her intended higher purpose may actually be. Turning her attention to the console on the other side of the room, Omega begins pushing buttons until she activates the facility's communications array. Whoops. There we go. Good shot of the communications array. Did you get the language on that one?
I did get the language on this one, but she's not really just pushing blind buttons. She knows what she's doing here.
I figured as much.
Because it's Camino technology, right?
I guess so, yeah.
So it'd probably be really similar to what she's already used to. So,
yeah.
That one says online.
It does.
I'm getting better at that.
There's a few parts here, though. On the left-hand side, it says critical.
Okay.
Noting that the facility is in critical condition.
Oh, yeah.
At the top of the pillar, it says this is where the satellite is located.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And below her is the escape pods.
Yep.
And then the satellite image itself flips between online and offline.
Oh, that's cool.
Perfect.
All right. Back on the Havoc Marauder, Echo picks up the signal and he locates it on the galactic map. You get a portion here of the map. Always love it when they show us stuff. Unfortunately, there's not a lot of other information on this except for that it's Boravio. Echo tells the rest of the batch that he's found Omega and she's in the Lido system. All right. And so here we go. Lido, every time they throw a new name at us, I'm always poring over them to see what kind of connections we can make. And this one's kind of thin, but here you go. The only Star Wars reference I can find to Lido was in The Rise of Skywalker during the Aki Festival, the Festival of the Ancestors. The festival goers are all singing a song, and it's called Lido, Hey. But I don't think it's connected because the planet Pasana, where the festival is being held, it's in another planetary system. So just a fluke that it happens to be a same name there.
Nice.
Having not found Omega, Toto returns to Cad Bane and discovers him lying unconscious in the hallway. With a quick check to determine that he's actually still alive, Toto sets out to recover the target. I won't let you down. Again, the loyalty, between these droids and their masters is it's uncanny, especially given, like we're just talking about, like how terrible he's been treated over the course of the entire Clone Wars series, and even in this episode where it's really like, I think in Cad Bane's perspective, Toto really is just another tool.
We could probably do an entire episode on sort of like the class struggle of droids, and
absolutely,
it's I can't. Although I love the property, it's nothing short of slavery, and the fact that most of our heroes treat their slaves really well, and are friends with them, they still don't have any real autonomy. And we could get into some deeper stuff about that, because this is really the first time you've ever seen somebody abuse a droid.
Yeah.
I mean, you see, they allude to Lando even doing more with a droid, and there are heavy connotations, especially in that Solo movie when L337 is freeing the droids. The idea that they're a
droid revolution,
a serf class, or a lesser class of being, even though they seem to have sentience, is not lost on me.
This isn't our first time seeing droid abuse, though. In Return of the Jedi, Jabba is clearly using droids left and right.
He has a torture droid, in fact. So good call. Actually,
99 is the other guy torturing
88.
Yeah, torturing a gonk droid.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Like when C-3PO comes in and he's like, Master got sick of the other one, so
that's right. You're right.
You're our replacement.
Perfect. Back in the hangar, Fennec finds Omega at the console for the communications array. Removing her helmet, she tells the girl they won't get here in time. The only person you can rely on is yourself. Turning to see the bounty hunter, Omega asks her why she killed Ton Wee. Fennec replies with a perfunctory, "It's part of the job." She continues, "You should thank me. What the Prime Minister has planned for you is far worse than why I'm here." And Omega asks her, "Why does he want me?" And Fennec tells her, "You already know." Looking at one of the glass containers, Omega sees a lifeless Kaminoan staring back at her. Fennec kneels down in front of Omega and softly tells her, "I'm trying to help you." But Omega, not trusting her, says, "You said the same thing back on Pantora." Just then, Toto 360 spots the pair through an open window and dives through in an attempt to apprehend Omega, but Fennec disables him with ease. As Fennec moves to see if Toto is alone, Omega returns to the communications array and continues tapping buttons. Thinking that Omega is trying to contact the Bad Batch, Fennec tells her, "I told you, it's too late for that," not realizing that Omega was actually manipulating the controls to unlock one of the cloning pods. And the pod falls, and when it hits the floor, the glass breaks, spilling out all the fluid along with the Kaminoan body, knocking Fennec to the floor. And that was kind of like, creepy.
And I see this strong aesthetic where that's clearly a Kaminoan, but maybe meatier, like bigger. Like, I know she's a child.
Yeah,
there's like that the body type that Snoke has.
Right.
And so I see a lot of similarities. Like they're moving from cloning themselves to cloning, they're trying to move through these process of creating this other type of thing. And I really see strong connections to the Snoke tanks.
I think again, knowing what the end game is, knowing where it's going, like all roads point to Palpatine, and Snoke is just one more stop along the way, especially seeing like those other Snoke clones on Exegol.
Right. It's almost implicitly stated that the Emperor's consciousness is inside that body.
Yeah.
Until he's cut in half by Kylo Ren.
Yeah.
To go the other way, though, on that, back when we were discussing their cloning and how long they've been doing it and whatnot, you guys did bring up that they were probably heavily genetically modified.
They absolutely are.
And this kind of confirms, they were experimenting on themselves long before they started building.
Yeah. And there may be they may be a race of clones themselves. Absolutely. Especially when you consider now we've seen a secret cloning facility. Like the other one was removed from the Galactic Registry. How friggin' secret is this new one?
Yeah, and I mean...
Well, they say it's an abandoned one.
Well, here's the thing. Why is it abandoned? Why would you abandon a cloning facility? And if it was abandoned, like what were the conditions that it was abandoned under? Because you've still got, like, you just shut the lights off and left. You've got escape pods. You've got bodies in cloning vats. Like,
there's still power. You're just still ready to rock.
You just dropped everything? What the hell happened here?
Yeah, and, you can only picture... rogue clone going, a la Alien, trying to, what could chase them away?
When we remember Tartakovsky's Clone Wars, do you remember that one? So, what was the name of that guy? The guy who was all like armor but tentacles underneath.
That eludes me. But he's been canonized in the comics.
I always thought of him as being like some kind of cloning experiment. Like he's just so weird for Star Wars. Like I'm like, wow, this is like really out there. Like he's got to be some kind of like weird genetically manipulated, modified. I can't remember his name, but anyway, you know who I'm talking about.
Yeah,
absolutely.
If it was something like that, where like maybe one of the experiments kind of like woke up,
got loose.
Yeah.
Kind of like Jurassic Park too.
Very much. So, climbing out from under the dead body, Fennec chases Omega, who's now made her way outside onto an observation deck. Looking down, she sees another circular building below. It's another hangar, and this one has a bunch of flight pods. There she is looking over the railing. Kind of reminds me of looking down through the clouds on Scarif.
Mm-hmm.
You can almost picture the communication tower there. It looks very much like that, similar kind of styling.
But at the same time, her having read the Orabesh, she knows what's down there.
Absolutely,
she's double checking that it's still there.
Yeah, oh yeah. Rushing to find a way down to the hangar, Omega comes face to face with Cad Bane, who has now recovered from the explosion. And before Omega can react, a bola flies over her shoulder, knocking the blaster from Cad Bane's hand. It's Fennec Shand, and she rushes forward, pushing Omega out of the way before she engages with Bane in hand-to-hand combat. The two trade blows for a while until Bane headbutts her, knocking her to the ground. Omega tries to crawl away as Bane stalks toward her. Before he can get to her, Fennec dashes back in and the fight is on again. At the other end of the corridor, Omega spots a ladder and quickly slips away as the two hunters continue to duke it out. There's this cool shot. Like, this whole fight sequence I thought was pretty cool, and for a while there, I wouldn't say that it was blow for blow, but it was pretty darn close.
Well, this goes a lot to establish her further. Like, yes, she took a bad batch on her own, but now she's going toe to toe with one of the baddest ones out there.
And here's the thing. We've already established that right up until, Boba Fett is like on the scene. As you said before, Hank, Cad Bane is the preeminent bounty hunter in the galaxy.
I almost felt like the fight was a little too close for me.
Yeah.
In my head canon, he just wipes the floor with her, but that wouldn't be very interesting to move the plot forward. So let's just say that grenade injured him, and that's why he.
That's why
she gets the best of him here. Yeah,
that's right. But it does lean into that whole thing about, in The Mandalorian, how the whole I don't miss.
Because both those hand to hand, she might be just so great. Like she ruins Wrecker with one move. Wrecker with one move. Right. So maybe that's her shtick, her hand to hand.
Definitely could be. I mean, but an ancient, I guess, low tech, like a low tech. Yeah, very much Terrascasi. A low tech weapon like a bola, and she just knocked the blaster out of his hand like it was nothing. Considering how far back she was, she's still in the fog, so she can probably barely see him, and knocks the blaster out of his hand. That's pretty impressive.
Yep.
Climbing down the ladder, Omega is intercepted by Toto. The droid tries repeatedly to knock her off, missing each time. But Omega knows that she won't be able to make it all the way down with a droid harassing her. So she leaps onto his back, and the two float all the way down to the hangar, landing
a la Obi-Wan. This is straight out of Attack of the Clones, man.
It is. Look at the look on her face. Like, it's that whole, like, she's questioning, was this the right thing to do? Like, should I have done this?
Yeah, it's the inverse of the what you do in Fallen Order when you use your droid as a bungee ride.
Yeah. As a zip line.
Yeah.
Omega looks up to see the two hunters are still fighting. Toto has landed upside down on his rectangular head and is now struggling to right himself. It's enough of an opportunity for her to make it into one of the flight pods. As she manipulates the flight pod controls, the diminutive droid has managed to get back up and is now tapping on the flight pod's viewport, thinking he has her cornered. And not being smart enough to let go, is blasted along with the flight pod high into the atmosphere until eventually he loses his grip and falls off.
But not before taking a piece of the ship with him.
Right. And so that kind of, where is here? I've got actually a shot of that. There we go. And you can see way off in the distance there, he's just fallen off. And there in the foreground, you can see the exposed where he ripped the panel off.
That's right.
The bounty hunter. Meanwhile, the fight between the two bounty hunters has taken a turn as Cad Bane knocks Fennec Shand unconscious. Just then, Toto radios in to tell him that the target is getting away. And we see the Cad Bane gets up. He furiously slams his fists on the railing and then orders Toto, get to the ship. Having quickly recovered, Fennec is back on her feet. She can't get the drop on Cad Bane as he turns to blast her with dual flamethrowers. Oh,
pulling out all the stops.
What I like about those is, did he use those in the Clone Wars at all? The flamethrowers?
I don't recall him ever using.
I don't recall him doing that either. But when he does that, and I'm looking at the thing and I'm like, is that a Mandalorian like gauntlet?
Could be.
Oh, could be.
It's got all of like it's certainly got the appearance with the chunky square box.
Does it have the lines back to like a tank or something? I never even really thought about it.
I think there's a line in there somewhere, but where it goes, I don't know.
Did we get the bolos out of order here? Because doesn't she?
Nope. She throws another one.
Oh,
yeah,
okay. I understand.
She throws a second one. Yeah. So having quickly, she's back on her feet, but gets with the flamethrowers. So, but Fennec is wily and she dodges the fire. Falling back down a dark hallway, she's able to hit Bane with another bola, which she follows up with a kick to the chest, knocking him over the railing and into the ether. And there he goes. Whoa. And of course, his hands are bound at his side, but he's able to recover by activating his boot jets. But by the time that he makes it back to the observation deck, Fennec Shand is long gone. Back on board the flight pod, Omega alarm sounds as Omega struggles with the controls. The vessel's trajectory has now taken a steep turn, and she is now headed towards the surface of the planet.
So do we think that that's some damage that he did to the pod when he pulled the panel off? Because maybe that was just a heat shield. But I'm also thinking that these pods are just designed to get them away from the facility, like spit them out into the ocean so that they can get away from some imminent danger, like just like
with
life rafts, like puked out into the ocean.
City, like I just kind of got into that whole like, oh, it's like Cloud City, so it's got to be a gaseous planet,
right?
What's at the core? Is it solid? Like you just don't know.
Yeah. But to clear up your question, Hank, the Orabesh in this scene, it says warning: port side fuel manifold damaged.
Perfect.
So what he ripped off did do enough damage that it's going to cause her to lose flight.
Perfect.
I wondered if if they were perfectly functional, if there was enough oomph to get her into like
orbit.
Perhaps.
So there's this moment of like panic and then resolve to her fate. Omega braces for impact as she leans back in the seat and draws her knees up to her chest. Crash positions. But instead of an impact, the pod is abruptly halted mid-flight and Omega is knocked out of her seat onto the floor. Picking herself up, she stares up at the hatch, kind of confused. And when the hatch opens, we see that there's a long corridor with a hatch ring at the other side. And when the hatch ring iris is open, an enthusiastic wrecker peers in and like, Omega, is that you? It would seem that the Havoc Marauder is equipped with a tractor beam that has prevented the pod from crashing.
Perfect.
The big man plucks her from the flight pod, and the clones are now reunited. Openly weeping, Omega presses her head into Hunter's chest and sobbingly says, why does this keep happening? Why are the Kaminoans after me? Of all of the traumatic stuff that's happened to her, this is the first time we've seen her cry.
Mm-hmm.
What a tough kid. And I mean that in the most genuine sense.
Oh, yeah, no, heavy. Yeah.
He winces when she goes to hug him.
I know.
Just reinforcing that injury's still there.
Yes.
Is it the physical thing that he's wincing on, or is it he's reacting to her emotional pain?
I don't know. I've had a hurt rib. And I think so.
Yeah.
I've had a hurt rib and a kid comes in for a hug. They don't know what they're doing, and you just kind of roll with it.
I guess so. That's true. Yeah. Echo beckons Hunter to tell her the truth, and he begins to lay it all out for her, revealing that she's different and in a way that makes her more important than any other clone, including the Bad Batch. Not willing to give up his quarry, Cad Bane storms onto the bridge of his ship, ordering Toto to get them in the air. And we get this pretty cool image of, oh my Lord, where is it? Here we go. Get a nice little image of them on the bridge as they're fumbling with controls. But it appears that Fennec Shand has left them with a parting gift, as none of the ship's systems are responding. As Fennec Shand enters orbit in her own ship, she receives a holo transmission from Nala Se. She asks the bounty hunter for an update, and Fennec tells her that Omega was rescued by the same clones that she encountered back on Pantora, adding that she could track them for a price. And Nala Se declines, stating that as long as she's not in the hands of the Prime Minister, she's safe. Fennec tells her that if she changes her mind, she knows how to contact her. Meanwhile, holed up in deep space, the batch take a long-needed break. Hunter sits at the controls while the rest of the team sleeps. Omega quietly climbs down from her bunk and goes to sit with Hunter in the cockpit. She's haunted by the vision of the failed experiments in the abandoned cloning facility and worries that the Kaminoans won't stop at sending bounty hunters after her. She really has that, like you said, back in the cloning facility, that realization of like what's going to happen to her, what could happen to her, and now it's kind of sunk in, like, this is my life. They're not going to stop coming. And Hunter says, oh, did I skip something? No. Hunter tells her that, they can send every bounty hunter in the galaxy, but it won't matter because she has them. That's but right. Dejectedly, Omega replies, you can't fight them all. While kneeling down to face her, Hunter tells her, you don't have to worry. You're never going back to Kamino. Whoops. Yeah. So, I mean, he gets right down on her level. That whole, like, wants to reassure her, spins the chair around, says, you're never going back. Omega looks up to meet his gaze, and she says, promise? And a very resolved Hunter replies, I promise. And with that, we fade to black, and the episode ends.
You ever watch It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia?
Yes.
Right on the end, it should have a big thing that says the batch goes back to Kamino. Right. I promise. We're headed back to Kamino, and that's almost like the craziest foreshadowing. There's got to be, like, there's going to be safety.
Yeah.
With Lama Su. They're going to have to maybe even rescue her.
You mean Nala Se? Yeah.
Sorry, Nala Se, yeah. They may even have to bring her into the fold. Certainly there's definitely going to be more bounty hunters. She's in trouble. Like, the Prime Minister is not going to let this one slide.
No.
So I think that you'll see more bounty hunters, and I think you'll see the big one.
The bounty episode. Yeah, I agree with you on that. I can't see it going any other way. Like, to me, it's just only a matter of time. If we go back to that whole head plate thing, and we just presume that animatic, that previs that we all saw, if that actually happened, then there's some bad blood between those two. And if Cad Bane's still alive, it's probably unresolved. And isn't this just the icing on the cake to motivate Boba to end it with some finality?
No, absolutely. And they're really good at hiding these characters from us in the stuff we've already seen, but there's no reason to believe that years later Omega isn't some sort of integral part of something going on in the background.
Yeah.
Well, to take another spin on that, because it was never like a finalized out there canon episode, what if that scene develops into something more of a standoff between Cad Bane and Boba Fett because Cad Bane wants the sister?
That could be as well.
And since it's a family issue for Boba, Bosk and everybody kind of stand back and say, no, you two handle this.
Right. And I mean, it's a less likely explanation, but
we could get that scene.
Cad Bane has always worn that, like, under sock under his hat. Is there just a slim chance that the adornment is just that? It's an adornment. It's a decorative thing. Probably not. No. I take it for what it is. It probably is a plate, but who knows? Maybe we will get a
retooling of that scene.
Yeah.
Brie tie looking mofo.
Yeah, very much. Well, guys, that's it. It's Bounty Lost. It's episode number 9 of the Bad Batch, and
So
as always,
good.
we're here to cover it all and to talk about it. And I think, man, I am so full of bounty hunter goodness. I don't know what else to pack in there.
Oh, it's crazy. Do yourself a favor, even online, check out the War of the Bounty Hunters going on at Marvel Comics. It is outstanding stuff. Outstanding stuff.
Yeah, and make sure you go back into Clone Wars and catch up on the Bounty Hunter episodes. Very much most of season 2 is almost all Bounty Hunter centric. And then there's a couple, 1 or 2 in season 3, but then season 4 kind of wraps up everything with Cad Bane and that whole kidnapping attempt on the Supreme Chancellor. So if you're looking for connective tissue to connect you to with where we're at in the Bad Batch, that's where you're going to find it. Streaming now on Disney Plus. Anything else anymore, guys?
Speaking of completely off topic, but speaking of connective tissue and hiding characters inside, did you see the thing that came up this week? I'm not sure which Facebook group it was, but it showed what could be an old Echo in the cantina
back in like A New Hope.
I believe so.
I did not catch that.
I will have to.
There's an image, and it's got a side by side with the 3 little dots on Echo's head.
Yeah,
and it's almost a perfect match for this character that has been sitting in the cantina.
There's so many alien goodness in the cantina shot that you could be unpacking that for ages. That could be an episode or a few covering who's who in the zoo in that place. Now I got to go and look for that. All right, well, maybe there's more on that to come that we don't know about, but you can bet if something does come about that, we'll cover it. But all right, guys, if there's no more, I guess that's it for me. We'll catch everybody next week. Same batch time, same batch channel, as we review episode 10 of the Bad Batch. Until then, everybody, my name is Wes for Fandom Power with Andy and Hank. We love you all.
Like and subscribe.
Like and subscribe.
Smash the button.
Bye for now, everybody.
Hey guys, thanks for listening to Fandom Power. Be sure to like us on Facebook and follow us on Instagram and Twitter. Stay tuned for our next episode where we'll be talking about another one of your favorite fandoms. Fandom Power is a Sawcast production.
I'm a few episodes into Ewoks now.
Are you?
It's funny. The first episode I watched, and I was like, holy shit, the one Duloc is voiced by the guy that did Beastly in Care Bears.
Yeah, it is. Yeah.
And the lead Duloc is voiced by the guy that did Beaster on My Pet Monster.
The voice acting community, I think, is pretty small, and you heard the same voices all over the place. I couldn't come up with a name for you, but what's his name? The guy who did Darkwing Duck.
Oh, okay.
In every show that he's in, I can't help but hear every character he does. It's Darkwing Duck.